Hello, everybody. Oh, the mic actually does work. I thought that was just for the live stream, but well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. We really, really appreciate it. It's evening, and it's not always easy to get motivated, so thank you so much. This is the Gut-Brain Connection through the Functional Medicine Lens, and I am Elana Mundorff. I am a licensed psychotherapist. I'm also a functional medicine practitioner and a homeopath. I have a practice that is called Optimal Wellness Naturally, and my focus is on mental health. So I help people who are struggling with anxiety, depression, chronic stress, all of that kind of stuff to heal naturally so that they're hopefully either staying away from medication or maybe even minimizing their reliance on it.
And hi, I am Cheryl Schmid. I am a functional medicine practitioner and a speech-language pathologist. And I have a practice called the Well Chat. I Zoom all my clients. I work with people who are either healthy and want to get more optimally healthy. Maybe they want information around supplements, diet, just to sort of tweak what they're already doing. Or the majority of the people who come to me are sick and have a chronic ongoing disease or dis-ease that they want to improve on, also get off medication or avoid medication. We also have a program that we do together, the Gut-Brain Connection. It's called the Platinum Program, where we address people who have both mental health and gut health issues, two experts in the field kind of looking at the same person in a more holistic way.
So today we are going to go over a few things. We're going to talk a little bit more about what is functional medicine anyway. I'm going to start off and talk more about the mind-body connection aspect and chronic stress and the impact of that on the nervous system. And then we're going to segue into the gut and talk more about digestion, the importance of what we're putting into our bodies, food sensitivities, and then the importance of testing when you're looking at how to address whatever issues you have going on. So for me, this all began back when I was in my 20s. This was everything that I had going on. Anxiety, panic attacks, daily panic attacks. Actually, they thought that I was having seizures because that's what they looked like. Eczema, migraines, I even had shingles in my 20s. That was fun. And hives, IBS, a lot of gut stuff. And so, probably like many of you, I went from doctor to doctor, and each one that I went to looked at one particular part of my body, one symptom, and I walked out with one prescription. So there came a point when my medicine cabinet was kind of ridiculous. I had so many different medications to manage all of the different things that I had going on. And I just knew something wasn't right. This just didn't make sense, right? I mean, I felt like at one point I was taking more medications than I was taking in food. So that started my journey into holistic health and trying to figure out how all of this was connected, and it was all connected, and how could I help myself to heal in a better way, in a natural way. In the meantime, I was already a practicing psychotherapist, and I noticed with my patients that there was definitely a segment of people that got better, right, with psychotherapy, and then there were people that did not. So despite all of the things and all the coping skills, they didn't get better. They were still struggling. And at the time, it was a mystery, and the only alternative for them was medication. That's when, a referral to a psychiatrist came into the picture. And I knew, even at the time, because people were saying, well, I don't really want to do, I don't want medication, or I don't want my kid to be on medication. I'm like, well, this isn't working, so this is what we're gonna have to do. So as I went through my own journey, I figured out this was it. This was the missing link. This was the piece that I wasn't offering to people at the time because I didn't have the skills and the knowledge at the time. So that's how this practice came into be. So I take all of the things that I do as a psychotherapist, mindset, cognitive work, all of that stuff, coping skills and blend it with the holistic medicine, functional medicine, homeopathy. And then that's when I really started seeing people getting better.
And my turn. Yeah. So I was, by the time I was 40, I was diagnosed with 10 so-called incurable diseases. 4 of them were autoimmune. I had IBS, I had SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I couldn't eat anything without being completely bloated and sick. I developed acne for the first time in my life in my 40s. I was getting anaphylactic reactions to things that I was always fine with. But it wasn't just me. It was also my daughter. This is her when she was 5. She's 15 now. She was actually younger. This might have been 4. But she didn't always look that bloated. This was just a very bloated day. And it never stopped her, right? She was never crumpled over in pain. She'd be running around outside having fun. But she would just say, "Mommy, my belly hurts." And I would say, "Well, you're doing cartwheels as you tell me that, so I guess it doesn't hurt that bad." But one day, I just randomly asked her, I said, "Gemma, does your belly hurt now?" And when I was putting her to bed, and she said, "Mommy, my belly never doesn't hurt." And that's when I said, oh, man, I gotta stop just thinking this is nothing, or listening to what the pediatrician said, which was she might be looking for attention. So she had SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Again, it's a GI issue. She had supposed acid reflux. She had chronic bloat, chronic constipation, and the doctors caused this, by the way. I know I'm not bashing doctors. I think they're life-saving. I think they have a huge role. But for chronic illnesses where they're failing us. And so they put her on a PPI, Prevacid, a reflux medication, because they thought she might have silent reflux. They didn't know. I said she has no symptoms, though. She's not throwing up. She's not. But it's silent reflux because she wasn't taking in 24 ounces of formula, which is the amount they wanted. She was only doing 19. So my 8-week premature baby was not taking in their standard amount. They put her on that for a year. Third leading cause of SIBO is chronic use of PPIs. Now I know that. So how do we fix it? After 2 years of conventional therapies failing us, we turned to functional medicine, herbal antibiotics, mucilagenic herbs, and hydrochloric acid. Reverse this in 6 weeks. This was gone in 6 weeks. So, but it's not just me and Elana and my daughter, it's all of us, right? Almost all of us are dealing with something, 1, 2, 3 of these on this page, or your loved ones are. Because it's just too typical these days. This is not a slide I made. This is a slide from the CDC. It's on their site right now. 6 in 1 adults have 1 chronic disease, and 4 in 10 have 2 or more chronic diseases. So what is functional medicine? Functional medicine is a way of looking at dis-ease that is not looking at the symptom and treating it. It's looking at the whole being. We know instinctively with plants that we need to look at the whole thing, right? We would never look at the browning leaf of a plant and say, it's a leaf problem, or let's get green paint and cover it up. We would say, is it getting enough water? Is it getting too much water? Is it getting enough sunlight? Is the soil toxic? Are we talking nicely to the plant? We would look at everything about the plant and almost not the leaf at all. But that's not what we're doing in conventional medicine with chronic disease. We are separating it all out. And it's not working. There's a better way. And here's my segue to let Elana take over and talk about mental health.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about chronic illness statistics. Here's just a couple of statistics on mental health. So in the US, about 18% of adults are struggling with depression, and nearly 33% of adults are struggling with anxiety. That's pretty darn high, so getting close to 50% of people struggling with anxiety. When people think about mental health, they typically think about the brain. They typically think about the mind. The problem with that is that our brain is not detached from the rest of our body. Our heads nicely sit on our neck and are attached to the rest of our bodies, and so everything is actually interconnected. So when we're looking at health, we have to remember that the body and the brain are actually very, very intimately connected. And so instead of just working on the brain alone, we have to work on the whole body. So similarly to that plant slide, we're not just looking at thoughts or the brain. We are looking at the entire system. So in order to heal the mind, we have to heal the body. So why are we struggling? There's 3 key reasons why we struggle. Now these are oversimplifications, obviously, but crap food, toxins, and stress. So those are the 3 things that we're going to talk a little bit more about. So when we talk about crap food, this is a pretty common American diet, right? I mean, these are pretty familiar to a lot of us, right? Food is actually information. Food tells us things. I always think about the body as not really being able to see what's going on the outside. And so it takes its cues from what we give it, from what we do. So when we take in food that is full of preservatives and chemicals and ingredients that we can't even pronounce, our body responds exactly the way it's supposed to. The body goes, danger, danger, danger. Something's not okay. This world is not safe. This food is telling us that this world is not safe. And so the body responds by attacking. The body responds by fight or flight, and it responds by creating inflammation. So it's important to remember and to pay attention to what we put in our bodies. Another element of food are food sensitivities. Does anybody here know that they have a known allergy or food sensitivity? Okay, couple. So it's interesting because Cheryl and I talk a lot about food sensitivities to our clients, and people always say, but I don't have any gut issues, so I can't have any food sensitivities. This is just a glimpse, a snapshot of some of the symptoms that people can have with food sensitivities. There, of course, can be bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea. Those things absolutely can exist. But really, really, really important to remember is that there might be no gut issues whatsoever, okay? And I've just circled, for the sake of my portion of the presentation, some symptoms that you might recognize in terms of mental health, right? Depression, fatigue, heart palpitations, brain fog, anxiety, focus issues. These can be symptoms of food sensitivities. It doesn't always happen. A lot of times there's other stuff that goes on as well. But sometimes I have clients who eliminate food sensitivities, and we could do elimination diets or we could do testing. But regardless, they remove those sensitivities and that's it. They're better. Again, most people have other things that are going on as well. But there are some times that people eliminate gluten, for example, and they're like, oh my God, my anxiety's gone. Yeah, because again, your body was responding by triggering that fight or flight, which is exactly what it's supposed to do when it thinks that there's a foreign invader. So really important to recognize that mental health issues can absolutely be connected to food and food sensitivities. So the gut, which Cheryl is going to get into a heck of a lot more than I will, but the gut is actually known as the second brain. That's become more and more well known. You might already have heard it or seen it in the news. So gut is the second brain. So there's a part of the gut that's called the enteric nervous system. It is in the lining of the gut, and that is what is known as the second brain. Why is that? Well, in the gut, we produce 90% of serotonin. So we think of, psychiatrists are talking about medication, SSRIs. because your brain is not producing enough serotonin. No. It's not the brain that's not producing enough serotonin. It's the gut that's not producing enough serotonin. And 50% of dopamine is also made in the gut. So, what do you think happens if the gut's not functioning well? Or if the gut's attacking itself or other parts of the body because of food sensitivities or dysbiosis or other things? Well, impaired gut means decreased neurotransmitter production. When we don't have those neurotransmitters that make us happy and give us good feelings, we feel depressed and anxious. So that's why it's so important to heal the gut, to heal the whole body, in order to allow it to do what it's supposed to do, which is make these neurotransmitters and help us to feel good. So remember those three things: crap food, toxins, and stress. So this second prong, toxins. I mean, look around, right? I mean, what are we exposed to all the time? We're exposed to a lot of toxins. Air pollution, chemicals, pesticides, fragrances, even things like medication. So medication can be, I'm not against medication. I take it when I need it, give it to my kids when they absolutely need it. But medication is something that the body has to process. It's processed through the body. It is something that needs to leave the body, and if not, there can be a toxic buildup. Makeup, household products, filled with toxins. And so just even in our home alone, a lot of times unknowingly, we're exposing ourselves to toxins. And the last prong, stress. Crap food, toxins, and stress. Chronic stress alone can create disease. That's a really important takeaway. People forget about stress. They're like, oh yeah, stress, whatever. Everybody's stressed. That's a problem, that we're all stressed. Chronic stress alone, with nothing else, can impair digestion, create chronic fatigue, create systemic inflammation, mess up blood sugar, weaken the immune system, throw off hormones, create cardiovascular issues, and depression and anxiety, right? I mean, that makes sense, chronic stress, depression, and anxiety. So when we think about all of this together and what's going on in our lives, it actually makes a lot of sense. Our bodies are not dumb. Our bodies are actually very, very wise. When we are exposing ourselves to all of these things, how do we expect ourselves to feel fantastic, right? We're stressed, we're malnourished, we're overwhelmed, inflamed, we're not getting enough rest. I mean, kids these days, I have 2 kids, their schedules are insane. I mean, I don't remember that when I was growing up, but now it's like, if you're not in travel, whatever, by the time you're 2, you're left behind. I mean, it's insanity. You know, in my psychotherapy practice, the number of high schoolers that I see is alarming. It's frightening, right? So we are overwhelming ourselves and our kids from a very young age. And not purposely, right? But this is just sort of the society that we exist in. So truly, our minds and our bodies, they are doing the best that they can given the circumstances that we're asking them to live in. So we need to do better. We need to create an environment that helps us to feel better. So here's a pretty common scenario. Chronic stress, which we just talked about, all the reasons that create chronic stress. It impairs digestion. It does that by triggering the fight or flight nervous system mode. When that happens, digestive secretions are brought down. That's a protective mechanism. That is exactly what's supposed to happen when we're in fight or flight. Well, if we're not digesting food well, lots of things are low. But B6 in particular is necessary for the production of serotonin. Remember we talked about the gut, 90%? So we're chronically stressed, low vitamin B, not producing serotonin. What happens when we're not producing enough serotonin? Depression and anxiety. And then when we're depressed and we're anxious, that creates a physiological state of chronic stress. And then it just keeps going around and around. So the nervous system. The nervous system's kind of getting a lot of chat these days. Nervous system dysregulation, anybody hearing that? That's sort of it's not a new term, but it's a newer kind of faddish term, like nervous system dysregulation. For a good reason. The nervous system controls a lot of things, including mood management. So, we have two nervous system states. We have our sympathetic nervous system state, that's the fight, flight, freeze. And we have the parasympathetic nervous system state, that's the rest, digest, and heal. Keep in mind that we can only be in one at a time. So if you're in fight or flight, you're not in parasympathetic mode. Now, fight, flight, amazing, right? If you're getting chased by a tiger, you want your body to trigger fight or flight because that is what it is going to. It gets your heart pumping, it gets that adrenaline flowing. That's why the digestive secretions go down, by the way. We can't be bothered digesting food if a tiger is chasing us. We can't be bothered with that. Good reason, for a good reason. The problem is with chronic stress and all that we have going on and contributing to it, crap food, toxin, stress, more and more people are existing predominantly in that state. And so when we are in this state, we are not digesting and we are not healing. So we need to support our body in getting into that calmer state of mind. Nervous system dysregulation can look like a lot of things. So again, this is fight or flight. So if you're feeling super emotional, irritable, anxious, depressed, maybe you're having difficulty sleeping, maybe you feel like your heart palpitates a lot, you're feeling tense. Sometimes people even say, I have a lot of clients who say like, oh, my neck is just like constantly sore. Yeah, because this is what happens, right, when we're in a dysregulated state. Stomach aches, we're going to talk more about the gut, and, well, we withdraw when we don't feel good. So why is our nervous system dysregulated? Does this slide look familiar? This is exactly the same slide that we talked about at the beginning about why we're struggling so much. So our nervous system gets dysregulated because of crap food, toxins, and stress. And these are just some examples. So food can be affecting us because of high alcohol intake, chemicals, maybe it's just not very nutrient rich. Heavy metals in terms of toxins, pesticides, again, just environmental pollution and what we're breathing in every day. And then stress. You know, we're overworked, we're overbusy, we're overplanned. Unresolved trauma can definitely contribute to that. Underlying health conditions too. So something to keep in mind real quick with stress is that that does not have to be emotional or mental stress. Stress also includes physiological stress. So our body responds the same way, whether the stress is because of, again, food sensitivities, as it does if you're telling yourself, I can't do this is too much, I hate myself, my life sucks. It's going to respond in the exact same way. So we need to tackle it from every angle. So what do? How do we help to calm everything down? Here's just a bunch of stuff that I put up as suggestions. The top section has what I feel like are maybe a little bit more well-known or common practices for regulating the nervous system. The bottom half, maybe not as much. Maybe people are not quite as familiar. Guided imagery, progressive muscle relaxation. Again, diet and eating hygiene is super important for regulating the nervous system. Sleep hygiene and singing, humming, and chanting. Anybody feel like they have a favorite? Or one that they're unfamiliar with?
I love singing.
I love it. Me too. Don't drive near me and judge me because, woo, I am singing, usually my 80s tunes. Why? I love that you wrote that one up because a lot of people go, huh? I mean, besides like it makes you feel good and it's fun, singing, humming, and chanting. What does that have to do with nervous system? Any guesses?
Well, it's your vasovagal response. Yeah.
Ding, 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 we have a winner. Yes, it triggers that vagus nerve, right? And the vagus nerve is what triggers the parasympathetic nervous system. So even if you're stressed out, hum to yourself, sing a song, do these other things too. But yes, that act gargling, right? There's a bunch of things that activate that nervous system. Good answer. Okay. And then in terms of things that don't have to do as much with behavioral things, these are some calming supports. These are some supplements that people have found to be useful to help to calm the nervous system. Magnesium, you might know, but it's really important to take the right kind of magnesium. So magnesium glycinate is a nice one to try to start with because it's bioavailable, the body can use it more. What's the one that's out everywhere, the crappy one, zinc or magnesium? Citrate is good for constipation. Oxide? Oxide. Oxide is in everything. Don't get the oxide. It's manufactured, so it's not as bioavailable. So people go, I don't know, I'm taking so much magnesium. And I go, tell me which kind. And they flip the bottle over. If it says oxide, do yourself a favor and toss it. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody can handle the glycinate, right? So depending on what you have going on, that's why we really try to individualize it for people. Mali is another good one. GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. L-theanine, lemon balm. I love lemon balm. They have these gummies. So good. Vetiver essential oil. So a lot of people know about lavender. That's a popular one. Vetiver is another nice one that will help to induce that calming effect. And omega-3s and hydration, electrolytes, a lot of times that can give us a lot of that kind of jittery, anxious feeling, and it's just that we're hydrating. Keep in mind that you could have tons and tons of water and you could still be dehydrated. So the electrolytes are a really important piece to get in the minerals that our body needs because we're not always absorbing that well. So if you're peeing it out, it ain't doing anything for you. So just to sum up quickly, we talked about the 3 key things that are problems. Now we're going to talk about the 3 key pieces of solving these issues. So we want to maximize what the body wants and needs, minimize or try to take away what the body hates, and prioritize an environment that allows your body to heal. So I'm going to try to sift through these somewhat quickly. So what are some examples of things that we want to maximize? Clean water, because again, there can be actually toxins and stuff in water, so clean water, not just any water. Don't go to your tap, please. Vitamins, minerals, proteins, oxygen, clean air, gut health, which Cheryl's going to talk more about, and positive thinking. This is really important too. Remember I talked about how the body is like can't see, and it takes its cues from things. So it takes its cues from food. It also takes its cues from our thoughts. So this I found fascinating. I don't know why. I should know better. But so your body doesn't know if something is actually happening or you're just thinking it. So think about that for a second. So if you're going, oh my gosh, this is too much. I can't handle it. Everything bad happens to me. I can never catch a break. Everything's awful. Your body's going, man, there's some terrible going on out there. That sounds like a really awful world. You could be sitting in a yoga studio in your little meditational position, but if you're thinking those thoughts, your body thinks you're running from a tiger. So thoughts are a reality when it comes to your body. That is so, so important to keep in mind. Okay, minimize stress and trauma. So unresolved trauma is really important to address and heal. All the crap that we're exposed to. Again, similarly, those limiting beliefs, right? We want to work on minimizing those. Mindset is super important. Allergens, food sensitivities, and fear. Fear drives the sympathetic, that fight or flight nervous system mode. And what are we prioritizing? Lots of really good, happy things. Sleep hygiene, laughter, exercise, deep breathing, positive mindset, relationships. Gratitude journaling is such a simple thing to do. You don't actually have to have a journal. If you like journaling, awesome. But what I try to do, I'm not always good about it, but before I go to bed, I try to just run through all the things that I'm grateful for. Because again, your body's listening, right? So if you're giving it positive things to focus on, your body's gonna respond in kind. Any of these happen to be favorites for people? What do we like? No? Yoga? Yeah. And just laughing, right? I mean, we all have that friend, right? That one that has us rolling. And put on a comedy. I tell that to my clients, my patients all the time. Like, throw on a comedy. Right? Laughter is the best medicine. Okay. So when I'm addressing mental health, if it's not clear to you by now, this is how I'm addressing mental health. When somebody comes to me saying that they're chronically stressed, they're anxious, they're depressed, I am looking at their mindset. We are working on coping strategies. But we're also looking at all of these things. Heavy metals, blood sugar, infections, gut, inflammation, micronutrients, and we individualize that. So if there's stuff going on with your gut, we need to fix the gut, or your mind's, or it's not gonna go anywhere. So this is really holistically how we need to start treating mental health. Segue time. So we are now going to segue into Cheryl's portion where she's going to talk a whole lot more about gut and the importance of gut.
Good. Segue. Okay. So, who here hasn't had this? Right? Oh my God, I just say it, let me unbutton my pants. It's the new normal. It's actually common, but it's not normal. So we're gonna be brave. We're gonna talk about your poop. Not my poop, your poop. So, who is going to tell me where they are on this chart? 1 through 7. Oh my God, I was really just kidding. I didn't think anyone would answer, but I had someone raise their hand. She is brave. Go ahead, let's hear it.
4.
Oh, just showing off over there. Who else? All right, what do you think is optimal? Someone said 6, someone said 4, 4 or 5, 3 or 4. Okay.
It's supposed to look like an S, someone was telling me.
That was Dr. Oz in the 80s. I don't know about that. Okay, so this is a Bristol stool chart. Optimum is 4. But let me ask you this. 1 and 2 are constipated. If you're going every day, you could be going every day. But if you're going 1 and 2, you're constipated. If you are 6 and 7, we gotta talk. Is your poop supposed to float or sink? Anybody else have another idea?
No, I don't even take it out.
God, we got some smarties. Yeah, it's supposed to sink. Why would it float?
If you didn't have enough
Air. Someone said fat, someone said air. Fiber. It will float if there's fat. Raise your hand if you said fat. Her. Yeah, just like chicken soup, you make it, the fat floats to the top. It means you're not well absorbing of fat. You have some fatty acid malabsorption, and we need to talk because it should sink. So if poop could talk, this is what it would say. When I'm at you should see my questionnaire, my health history questionnaire. It asks so much about your poop. Is it pale? Because if it's pale, I'm thinking sluggish bile. We talked a little bit about digestive secretions, hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, and bile. Bile gives your poop its color. Bile emulsifies fat for absorption. It's a transporter of toxins out of your body. So if it's pale, I'm thinking you have some sluggish bile. We're going to correct that. If it's loose, I'm thinking food sensitivities, a dysbiosis, maybe there's SIBO. There's 3 different kinds of SIBO. There's hydrogen, which would cause diarrhea. There's methane mediated, that would cause constipation, which is what my daughters both had because of that. I have twins. They both were given that PPI. They both got SIBO. Dysbiosis, if there's nausea or pain on an empty stomach, I'm thinking either an ulcer, H. pylori, you might have heard of H. pylori, it's an infection in your gut, or zinc on an empty stomach will always cause nausea, so don't do that. Upper belly bloat, I'm thinking low stomach acid or SIBO. If it floats or streaks the toilet bowl, or if there's excessive wiping, I'm thinking poor fat absorption. So the goal for you guys is if you want to wipe and you want to have your toilet paper so clean that you can just put it back and use it next time. I do that. I buy 1 roll, it lasts me like a month. I'm kidding, I don't do that. But I could, the goal is to be able to do that. And constipation, I'm thinking either methane-mediated SIBO, low magnesium. We talked about magnesium, or Elana talks about magnesium. Yeah, citrate is the good one for that. Oxide is also good for that. However, you don't want to use oxide because it lowers stomach acid. So get rid of that oxide. Use citrate. Some people need more support than that. We're going to get into that. Dehydration. Dehydration alone can cause constipation. Elana touched on this. If you're drinking a whole bunch, you're overhydrating. And that leads to dehydration because you're just peeing out all those minerals. Low thyroid. Sluggish thyroid, sluggish everything. That's the same. Sluggish thyroid, sluggish motility. Sluggish thyroid, sluggish metabolism. Sluggish thyroid, sluggish hair cell regeneration. Sluggish everything. So you don't have to be out of range hypothyroid diagnosed. You just need to have sluggish thyroid. So you don't want to just get TSH and T4 tested. You want 6 in a panel. So I ask your doctor, I want a TSH, I want a free T4, I want a free T3, I want a reverse T3, I want TPO and TGAB. And that's going to cover you for a good look at your thyroid, but then you need someone who's a bit savvy in the world of thyroid to interpret those results. So, come on in, sit down, we're just chatting.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What if it's different times when you go? Like, can it change on what you have in one day?
Yeah, because if you're eating your food sensitivity that day, it could be diarrhea that
It
day.
can keep changing, right?
And then you didn't eat it the next day, and now you're constipated.
Right.
Because maybe you're living as a constipated person, but sometimes you're having cheese, or gluten, whatever your food sensitivity is, and that's making it loose. And then you didn't have it the next day because you were like, I really felt like crap, so now I'm going to be good. And now you're constipated. And sometimes people end up having a number 4 when really I'm losing people. I'm going to do something extra here. So sometimes you need to have, they'll tell me there are 4. And then we uncover that we take away the food sensitivities and they're landing at constipation. And it was just looking like you had optimum poop, but you didn't. So what are the yeses? The yeses are, you want 1 to 2 easily passed stools a day where you feel a complete evacuation. You don't want to have them and go, I got to go again later, I can tell, but I'll stop for now. Medium brown in color, log shape, not balls, full evacuation, sinks, not floats. And you don't want discomfort, urgency, straining, streaking the toilet bowl, and excessive wiping. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about constipation because this is such a common one for so many of my clients. About 60 to 70% of my clients come to me with constipation, or they learn they have constipation once we take away a food sensitivity. So what are the causes of constipation? One is magnesium deficiency. This is a mineral. I do whole reels on my Instagram page about why are we so magnesium deficient. And, topsoil erosion, monocropping, it ain't in the soil, it ain't getting in our body. anti-nutrients, oxalate, phytates, lectins, antihistamine, all these could be or tannins. They can block nutrient absorption. SIBO will cause constipation, dehydration, the food sensitivity, or again, suboptimal thyroid. So I know that we had a few people with questions on constipation. Did anybody want to ask something on the slide? Okay, segue into, we already know this, we're not getting into this, we know, don't eat crab food, right? But most of my clients don't come to me first. Nobody comes to me first. They come to me after 3 GI doctors, 2 primaries, an endocrinologist, maybe a rheumatologist, and then they go, fine, I'll pay out of pocket and go see Cheryl. Because, first of all, functional medicine is not covered, so we can't take insurance. But they come to me eating already this. They'll say, I'm such a clean eater, I eat organic, grass-fed, only whole foods. I cook 99% of my foods at home, but I am so sick. What could it be? The reason is because we're not what we eat. What are we? We are what we... It's what we are what we digest and absorb. We're not what we eat. Not even by a long shot. I have carnivores who come to me with low total protein. And all they eat is meat. We're not what we eat, we are what we digest and absorb. And many things can interfere with that process of digestion and absorption. There are many, I'm just going to talk about the ones in white. So, stomach acid. I don't want you to go, well, that's not my problem, so I'm going to tune out and think about my to-do list because I don't have acid reflux. Because it's not all about acid reflux. It's a digestive hero. That Silver Surfer in the corner because he's a digestive hero. What does it do? The 3 main jobs, it cuts minerals from protein so that you can absorb them. You don't absorb them when that doesn't happen. It keeps the bullies on the playground in check. Candida, H. pylori, dysbiosis, overgrowths, parasites, it keeps them in check because it's acid and it's protective. And we want it in abundance in our stomach, in our gut. We don't want it to get through the lower esophageal sphincter and into our esophagus where it will burn. The lining in the esophagus is very thin. It's very robust, the lining in our gut. So we want an acidic environment in the gut, but we don't want that lower esophageal sphincter to inappropriately contract, maybe due to low magnesium or maybe due to inflammation. And then what happens? Acid comes up and it burns and hurts the esophagus. And lastly, stomach acid or hydrochloric acid is at the top of the digestive cascade. It triggers the release of digestive enzymes and bile. Without the acid trigger, the rest of the digestive cascade does not work well. So, for the people in the back, if stomach acid is not present to break down our food, then the nutrients from our food cannot be well absorbed, which will lead to deficiencies, which will lead to systemic issues. Not just gut issues. So how do you know if you have low stomach acid? Any of these look familiar to anyone? Because these are signs. Heartburn, obviously. Chronic belching, low stomach acid. Post-meal fatigue, my husband and I would sit on the couch. I'd bring 2 plates, and they were both the same. And I'd say, pick, he'd go, which is mine? I would say, it doesn't matter, pick one. So we'd sit there and eat, and then I'd lean on, he'd go, don't lean on me, I ate too much. And I was like, we ate the same amount, and I'm half your size. So you didn't eat too much. But he was bloated, and he didn't even know it. He just would feel so full. And that could be many things, but it's commonly it could be a food sensitivity, but it's commonly low stomach acid. Upper belly bloat, low stomach acid. Undigested food in the stool, IBS, could be low stomach acid, mineral deficiencies, rosacea, osteoporosis. I do presentations on osteoporosis for this reason alone, because we're not checking, we're not doing a bone calcium density score when we test, the gold standard test, right? It's a BMD, bone mineral, we're doing a bone mineral density test. Minerals that are not cleaved from protein do not get well absorbed. And therefore, you don't have minerals in your bones. Asthma, low protein, and food sensitivity is all signs of low stomach acid. That's where the carnivores come in. They eat meat all day, but they're not well absorbing it because they don't have enough stomach acid to sort of separate and denature that protein. which is what the hydrochloric acid does. So what's one thing that we could do? A simple, listen, I have clients that need a lot more support than this, but if you need a little support, these things can help. Or even if you need a lot of support, these things can help. Eating hygiene, it's free. It's not easy, but it's free. De-stress. Think of your meals as a one singular event. Don't eat on the way. Don't rush through it. You want to take maybe 3 to 4 box breaths before you eat because it puts you into parasympathetic nervous system mode. Rest, digest, and heal. If you're not in that mode, your digestive secretions deplete by 80%. Imagine when you're in fight and flight, 80% less hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, and bile. That's not a small amount. Okay, hydrate away from meals. Don't drink with your meals. It dilutes the digestive secretions that are needed to break down your food. Chew. We have lipase in our tongue. We have amylase in our saliva. When you have a compromised gut, this can be of assistance. Slow down. Maybe put your fork down between bites because you need some time for your satiating hormones, cholecystokinin, CKK, will turn on after about 20 minutes. And you know when you order a second meal or something from the restaurant, then they come and you're like, I'm not hungry anymore? The satiating hormone came on. Don't eat 2 to 3 hours before bed because you're going to feel it if you're someone who struggles with acid reflux. Yes?
Number 2, you said hydrate away from meals, so is it before or after?
30 minutes, at least 30 minutes before and an hour after.
Okay, so I have an issue, and I don't think it's just mental, but ever since I was a kid, I had a problem with swallowing I always had to drink while I ate. And if I don't, it just seems to get stuck.
So I wonder if that is something that Elana would talk about, something that's sort of blocking you, making you like having a fear that that's going to happen and makes you nervous, or is that like an actual?
It's an actual thing. That's why I'm saying that.
Okay.
It's been like that ever since I was a kid. Like I would.
Do you have is it Raynaud's that?
I have no idea. I've never checked into it. It's just I know that if I don't drink, it literally like feels like it's stuck in there.
Okay. I would do the smallest sips you can and cook to, break down the foods by making it more like stew-like, and then work with someone to figure that out because that's not typical, and so we want to figure out why that's happening.
But you're saying really don't drink while you eat. That's interesting.
If you need to take supplements, you take a sip with your supplements, and then you don't eat while you drink. In Europe, they don't even bring you water to your table in a restaurant. You need to ask for it because they know this in Europe for somehow, I don't know how. But in America, they come before you sit down and they're like, drink up because we want everyone to have very diluted digestive secretions so you can poorly absorb your food and make, the pharmaceutical company rich.
In Europe, they're drinking wine.
Maybe.
They don't drink anywhere. Does wine count in that hydration?
Liquids count. If you're having a soup, if you're having a stew, that's fine.
Right.
But liquids, people are gulping down
Right.
glasses of water with their meals. Yeah.
It's true that they don't serve water in Europe, but they serve wine.
That's
The
what she
The expectation is that you're supposed to drink it while you're eating.
Yeah. Well, now you know better.
Well, okay. Now, did you just say that we serve water in this country to make the pharmaceutical companies rich?
No, that was ridiculous. Whatever
Okay,
ridiculous.
just-
No, absolutely not. Okay. Here's my next segue because this is true in every aspect. Food sensitivities, again, no GI symptoms whatsoever, but it can look like this, right? So I know that Elena's were focused on more mental health, but it can look like headaches alone. It could look like depression, anxiety, fatigue, weight gain. Why would a food sensitivity cause weight gain? Anybody have an idea? What's the connection? Yeah?
Inflammation.
Inflammation, can you be more specific?
It's not digesting. You're not digesting.
You're not digesting and it's putting on weight.
Cortisol.
Cortisol. We're getting closer. Okay. So yeah, it causes inflammation. It causes you to not well digest because now your gut's inflamed. But cortisol is really getting much closer because if you're eating your food sensitivities, your body, this is a stress to your body. Your body thinks it's under stress and you're running from a bear. And like Elana said, we don't need to sit down and have a picnic. Our body knows not to put out hydrochloric acid, digestive enzymes, and bile. We know we don't need that right now because we need adrenaline, we need to focus, we're running, we're not sitting down and relaxing. So it literally stops the process because of that raised cortisol due to stress. Sinus congestion, that's dairy or histamine. It's almost always dairy or histamine. If you have chronic, you wake up and you're spitting up loogies, that's dairy or histamine. Achy joints, I got a slide on that in a minute. Lightheaded or dizzy, that could be a food that's usually histamine. Dairy.
What do you mean by histamine?
Histamine. Histamine is something we all have in our guts, and it's all around us. It's in the pollen. You heard of antihistamines, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's in foods a lot. It's in dairy, it's in cheese, it's in leftover meat, it's in vinegar, fermented foods, bone broth. Not for everyone. Not always good for gut health. Sometimes you want to avoid them if you have a histamine issue. Because our gut synthesizes an enzyme called diamine oxidase, or DAO. And that is synthesized in the gut lining so that you can break down histamine. But when your gut is compromised, you're not well producing DAO to break down histamine. And there's other ways histamine comes into play, but this is one of the ways we're supposed to be able to break it down. Skin issues, mine was, remember the picture of me with my acne? I went to 3 dermatologists. They told me I needed antibiotics. And I said, well, can I use herbal antibiotics? And they said, that's not going to work because you need something stronger. Well, they were wrong. They were all wrong because it worked. And heart racing, shortness of breath. Yes?
Back to the weight gain, maybe this is a simple thought, but could there be like compensatory food that you eat because you have food sensitivities or something, and because you're eating, to compensate, you're eating bad stuff? Could that be a component of the weight gain?
What do you mean to compensate your eating?
Well, let's say you don't feel well or you have these food allergies or some type of symptoms. Instead of eating those, you compensate by eating something else, and you eat that something else in excess.
So you're saying if you have, for example, a gluten sensitivity, and you say, I'm not going to eat the gluten, but I'm going to eat these rice cakes, but you feel like you're restricted, so now I'm going to show you and I'm going to eat 10 rice cakes.
Well, yeah, eventually, but maybe something a little bit less overt than that. But you just compensate for things that you can't eat by having other things and maybe eating some of those in excess.
Well, I definitely give my clients a whole list of things. If you're dairy-free, you're going to get this. If you're gluten-free, guess what? They make all these things. And I wouldn't say eat them in excess. Just eat them how you would eat them. You're telling us a little bit about yourself. I want you to know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do I work with someone with gut issues? I really feel, people will say to me all the time, oh, you're a functional medicine practitioner, so that's like a nutritionist, right? And I say, no, because I really feel like a gut detective. That's what I am. Because of anything here, the detailed health history is my most powerful tool. If we do no test, I can tell a lot about what is probably going on and what's wrong with this alone. But do I do a GI map stool test? A comprehensive stool analysis? Yeah, I love to get that data in. Full thyroid panel, of course, sluggish thyroid, sluggish everything, including motility. Micronutrient panel, I'll do that last because if you have a compromised gut, we know you're going to be low in a bunch of nutrients. So we don't need to do that first. I'll use that as what else can we improve here? A SIBO, lactulose 3-hour breath test. If you think that you have SIBO, which the symptoms are bloating, changes in bowel movement, increasing food sensitivities. That's it. Chronic bloating, especially toward the end of the day, changes in your bowels, and, well, now I can't eat anything. Seems like everything's bothering me. So we'll rule that out. You don't want to do a glucose test because the GI doctors, I went to the top New York City doctors, GI doctors at the top teaching hospitals in New York City, Harvard trained only. I was such a doctor snob, and now I've learned the hard way that that's not always the gold standard. Sometimes you have to go outside of the box. Sometimes I'm doing a Dutch hormone test or a food sensitivity test. And we're getting to the bottom of it because it's not rocket science and we could get to the bottom of it. So what do I do? Yes, nutrition, of course I'm talking about nutrition and what you should and shouldn't eat for your particular body. But we're also probably sometimes eradicating overgrowth, balancing the microbiome, regulating the nervous system. I'm sending my main, when I get people who say, my main issue is anxiety and gut issues. But what's your main issue? Anxiety is, Elana. Digestive and nutritional supports are often needed while we're working on the root cause. Here's a little fun one. So this is just, I just threw this in there because supplements are, people take them but they don't get enough guidance around them. And it's not because your doctor's withholding. He doesn't know. He wasn't trained in nutrition. So D3K2. Who takes D3K2? Or D3, vitamin D. You've heard you're supposed to take it with D3K2, with the K2, right? You've heard that? Does anybody know why? Okay. So last time I asked this, a lot of people said because it helps to absorb the vitamin D.
Blood clotting or something?
K1 is for blood clotting. K2 has very little to do with blood clotting. So a lot of people will ask me that, and they should be named different vitamins because they're so dissimilar. So it's not that the K helps you absorb the vitamin D, it's that the vitamin D increases calcium in the body. It increases calcium, but it doesn't tell the calcium where to go. Calcium will go wherever it wants. It might go to kidney. It might go to arteries. Well, that's calcifications and kidney stones, so we don't want that, atherosclerosis. We want the D to get to the calcium that's been enhanced from that vitamin D to go into bone where it belongs, and the calcium collects it, the vitamin K collects it, and it escorts the D into the bone, the calcium into the bone, where the calcium belongs. If you ever get a prescription vitamin D, it's always in D2 form, throw out the prescription and just go get the vitamin D3. Because the prescription is always in D2, poorly absorbed, difficult to convert, especially with a compromised gut. Okay, vitamin B12. A lot of people take vitamin B12. What does a vitamin B12 deficiency look like? I might have a slide, hold on. Don't look at all my slides. All right, forget it, I don't have it here. So a vitamin B deficiency, about B12 will look like brain fog, cold fingers and toes, maybe numb, tingling fingers and toes, and tired, low energy. So if you're buying it, you don't ever get the form cyanocobalamin. Poorly absorbed, needs to be converted to the other more active forms. You always want to get either methylcobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, or hydroxycobalamin, which is up there. So look at the back of your bottle. And I could talk all day about the different, there's so many devil in the detail. I do a lot of reels on Instagram about the devil in the detail with supplements. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. My final segue to give you a very common joint pain scenario. So if you're using aspirin a lot, if you have low vitamin D, or if you were on birth control pill for a number of years, guess what? They all are known, even separately and by themselves, to cause leaky gut. So you see this one? This is what we want, tight junctions. This one is leaky gut. Food proteins are getting down into the bloodstream and triggering your immune system. Inflammation, stranger, danger, foreign invader, let's get inflamed. And it creates something called immune complexes. Actual, tangible, little spiky balls of immune complexes that act like garbage in a river. You know how you go to a river and you see the garbage collecting at the bends in the river? That's what it does with joints. The immune complexes get stuck in areas of low circulation like joints, and then you feel pain, and then around and around we go. So my last two slides here are of Alexa, 44 years old. She came to me with chronic bloating, loose bowel movements, headache. You can see here a whole list. Hashimoto's, pre-diabetic. She was on omeprazole, which is an acid reducer. She was taking 5,000 IUs of vitamin D. That's a lot. 2,000 is maintenance, 5,000 is the therapeutic dose. So if you're taking 10,000, bring it down. Let me tell you why. Can you hear me? All right. just gonna hold. So here's vitamin D, and it uses up magnesium. So here's vitamin D, here's magnesium. When you take vitamin D, it uses magnesium to convert the D to its final and active form. And then you get symptoms of magnesium deficiency, which are headache, constipation, stiff muscles and joints, anxiety, poor sleep, restless leg syndrome. I could go on and on. So that vitamin D was not doing her a service. Oh, and she was taking magnesium oxide, which you would think, oh, she was taking 500 milligrams of magnesium oxide. So no, this is the poorly absorbed form. Did nothing for her. Oh, and she already came to me mostly gluten-free and eating very clean. So what do? We tested her for SIBO, H. pylori. We did a SIBO and a GI map. We went gluten and dairy-free. We tested her RBC, magnesium, red blood cell magnesium, not just regular serum magnesium. It's not a good enough valid marker. Ask for red blood cell magnesium. You want this at the optimal end, which is the upper end of the reference range. She was 5.2, lower end. And B12 is optimal at 650 or above. She was low. So we went gluten and dairy-free and low carb, stuffy nose and congestion resolved very quickly, days. Hashimoto's antibody normalized within 6 months. Brain fog was gone. She said it felt like a blanket was lifted and she was no longer in the pre-diabetic range. So the SIBO, the bloating resolved after the herbal antibiotics, which are known to be as good, if not better, in the studies than Xifaxan, the common antibiotic used. H. pylori, burping, reflux resolved with just 1 round. Some people need more. Weaned off of the reflux meds after 8 weeks, but she was on them for years. I think it was even decades. It was like years. She continues to take 2 hydrochloric acid capsules with meals, and that prevents her early satiety and fatigue. Magnesium malate worked better for her than glycinate to relieve her stiff muscles, headache. That resolved in a week. And the B12, 2,000 milligrams a day, much better. Not fully resolved, but she was much better. Last I spoke to her with her coldness and sort of tingling. It would wake her up at night sometimes, the tingling. And she lost 25 pounds bonus. She didn't come to me for that, but she was very happy.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
How long did it take to wean her off the proton pump inhibitor?
Well, for her, I think it was 8 weeks, which is pretty typical.
Okay.
A lot of people are sooner than that, but I would say it depends on the person and how much they're adhering to the protocol.
So she took the drugs that normally, and then you just wean them off overnight.
You have to wean. You can't just stop because you will get a rebound effect of reflux like nobody's business. So you have to wean, but you can't wean without doing the things.
Sure.
So we got rid of the H. pylori, which is a bacteria in your gut that are known to cause an alkaline environment. That's what they do. They lower your stomach acid because they thrive in a lower stomach acid environment. So we addressed the H. pylori, we changed her triggers and diet, and gave her the magnesium so her lower esophageal sphincter wasn't inappropriately contracting, allowing for that stomach acid to move up into the esophagus. So we hope that what your takeaways are here are that you now know that the gut and the brain are intrinsically connected. Heal the body in order to heal the mind. Crap food, toxins, and stress are the drivers of dis-ease. Listen to your poop. We are not what we eat, we are what? We Yay. Stomach acid is an unsung hero. Food sensitivities may have no gut symptoms. Test, don't guess, and you can heal because it's not rocket science. So anyone who's here, if you do take supplements, here's our handles on Instagram. You could send a DM, just write full script or supplements, and we're going to send you a link to get 50% off of all your supplements ongoing. And they also sell soaps and oils, like it's nice. So we are here to answer questions. Yes.
What's your opinion on all the, what do they call it, the fermented, like the kombucha and the, drinking pickle juice and all that stuff now?
I think it's great for some people. For some people, that would be really aggravating. That's going to aggravate a candida dynamic because the yeast, the mold, that's going to exacerbate it. If you have histamine issues, you're going to feel worse taking that. But we can easily get the gut health they're seeking by using something different. There's many ways up that mountain. We don't have to do those. We can use things that won't irritate their individual situation.
That's why it's so important for people to know that there's not a perfect diet for everybody, right? So, you know, people say, well, this works great for me, everybody should do it. There was a point where I was eating healthy, what I thought was right, salads, you know, all these other things. Turns out I had SIBO, and so those foods were I remember calling Cheryl and saying, I feel awful, like I'm eating these healthy foods, and it turns out, you know, it was aggravating the SIBO for me, and so I could have the best diet in the world, whatever that looks like, and I was still going to be symptomatic. So it's really important to individualize what you're taking or what you're doing for your body.
Yeah.
So, organic versus non-organic due to pesticides. So, based on organic being labeled under certain pesticides they cannot use, and do you believe that's true in the industry?
I know it's true, and you'll know it's true because if you ever see them wearing a hazmat suit with a mask and an oxygen tank so they're not breathing any of it, it's too clear to know that that's a toxin. You don't even want to breathe it in, forget putting it inside your body. So I believe in it.
Okay. No, because we saw something and you hear about all these stuff that's in your non-organic vegetables now.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with beans and chickpeas. Because chickpeas has a high level of pesticide, even because it's just sprayed to keep it not contaminated.
Yeah, coffee too. Coffee's one of the highest sprayed crops in the world.
And rice is a scary thing too.
The soil, the rice, arsenic, yeah. You gotta know what you're doing. It's scary out there. Yeah.
You mentioned B6 and you mentioned B12. I honed in on the B12 because I have the cold fingers and the cold feet. It just seems to be getting worse lately. So that seemed to resonate. But then you had also said something about B6. Is there a difference? What is the...
So the bees work synergistically. So, you know, unless somebody has a real sort of deficit in one area, like B12 is a common one, we do a lot of times recommend that people take a complex because each of the bees do something different. B6 is sort of a big one for mental health because it is such a key ingredient to neurotransmitters and it gets depleted easily. I mean, birth control is one of the primary things. So, you know, I do look at all of the different bees, but kind of in my world, you know, if somebody's like, you know, depressed or anxious or alcoholism, you know, is a big sort of B6 deficiency. Anything that's sort of satiety, right? So serotonin helps us to feel satiated. And so if that's missing, then we don't, and pain is another, you know, serotonin manages our pain levels. So that's an important factor as well. So sometimes people who are depressed and anxious kind of feel like they feel a lot, right? You know, and people think like, oh, they're being dramatic. No, it's a real physiological thing, and it's because the stuff that's driving the depression and anxiety is the same stuff that's driving like their pain perception.
I like Thorn Basic Bee. That's a nice brand.
You sell something, okay.
I don't sell anything. I have no affiliation with these.
The things that
You could find that on
On full script, yeah. But a lot of times I'll say start with Thorn Basic Bee, and people can be very sensitive because what B6 specifically, it does all the things Elana said, but it also opens detoxification pathways. It's a precursor to glutathione. You're a major antioxidant and heavy metal detoxifier. So if you start B6 too much, or even a B capsule all at once, I'm going to suggest you open it, sprinkle a little bit for the first few days you take it, maybe the first week, then every other day you take a half, then over the course of 2 weeks you'll be up to 1 capsule a day, but start low and slow.
Low and slow is the key with B vitamins.
With the B6, with all the Bs.
All
The
the
B
Bs.
Thorn Basic B Complex.
Okay.
Sometimes I give my clients, if they're low, like I had somebody in the 200s, optimal for B12 is above 650.
Because of that detox thing, that pathway that it opens up, so too much B6 too quickly, guess what it does? It makes you feel anxious. So a lot of times say, oh, I can't take it, it's making me feel worse. your body has to acclimate, right? All of a sudden it's kickstarting all these processes in the body and you're like, what the heck is going on here? So we have to be able to handle it's like slowly turning the volume up. You ever, I drive at night and I'm like a wild woman with the radio, and the next morning I turn on the car and I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I'm not the same person I was yesterday. So you have to turn down the volume and slowly crank it up so that we acclimate to it, our body acclimates to it.
But sometimes I do give B complex, that Thorne basic B, start low and slow, and then I'll give a separate B12 if they're particularly low in B, if their marker comes back in the 200s or 300s or even sometimes the 400s, I'll say take a separate B12 lozenge, but always take Bs earlier in the day. They can be energizing.
You're activating.
Yes.
Yes. Can you take, I think it's called betaine HCl, if you have a history of ulcers?
No. That's why I have a slide, it's not here, but I do presentations on reflux all by itself. Like that's the one topic that we cover. And HCl is hydrochloric acid, it's acid. It's going to irritate if the esophageal lining has ulcers. So you don't want to take this certain way. I always say work with a practitioner if you're going to do an HCl trial. That's a hydrochloric acid trial. When I talk about having low stomach acid, you can buy hydrochloric acid, which could be very helpful, but it's contraindicated for a lot of people. Barrett's esophagus, ulcers if you're taking aspirin. So you want to work with someone who's savvy in this area before you just take this.
What about like drinking water with acid vinegar, like apple cider vinegar?
That's good for some people, not for those with histamine. It's good for digestion, it's good for blood sugar. It's not great for people with histamine, so you don't want to take it. Depends who you are, always. But you just said something. HCl with ulcers, it'll come back to me. I have another thought. Yeah?
It seems you've obviously addressed some really good vitamin issues. What is your feeling about multivitamins?
Some are good. I like Pure Encapsulations 1, O-N-E. That's a nice company. It's good forms. Some are junk, right? If you have methylcobalamin, that's good. If you have cyanocobalamin, that's bad. If you're taking B6, you want to look for my Staten Island came out there. You want to look for B6 in the form of P5P or paradoxyl 5-phosphate, P5P. If you're looking at a B6 and it just says paradoxine, not converted. So it depends on the company. The one I just told you, Pure Encapsulations 1, has converted forms. It has decent amounts. Don't take it on an empty stomach because it has zinc. It will cause nausea.
People pull out their Centrum and we cringe.
Oh.
Because that just has a lot of the...
But it says senior on it.
I know, it must be good. It says senior, right? You're better off taking the one. It just has a lot of the man-made versions of things, and again, ones that are just not well absorbed. And so it's almost doing more damage, right? It can create an inflammation.
Also very tiny amounts.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, multis are for maintenance. They're not a therapeutic. If someone is having a B6 deficiency or a B12 or a vitamin D deficiency, we're giving that specific.
Okay.
I don't give a lot of multis unless I'm done and they're done with working with me and they're going to go off and fly on their own. Let's do something maintenance-wise.
And it's always better to get it from food, right? But like the reality is, like my 18-year-old,
You're not what you eat. You're what you eat.
He needs a multi.
In the back?
Two questions. Going back to the water question, I know you said that 30 minutes before you eat or when after?
An hour.
Oh, an hour. Okay, and then going back.
Because you're digesting. Things are trying to digest. All the secretions are out. You're going to dilute them.
Right, okay. And then back to the vitamins. What is your thoughts on zinc?
Zinc, get it in citrate or picolinate form, not zinc chloride or one of the other forms because they're not well absorbed. Always take it with a meal. If you're going to take it long term, be sure to get a zinc plus, like zinc and copper, because they compete for absorption.
They compete with each other. So sometimes people take zinc long term and they don't realize that they're throwing off their copper, and that can do a whole bunch of other stuff. But in mental health, we like zinc because the little saying is no zinc, no think. So that can really be a part of ADHD and kind of brain fog sort of thing. So it might just be a nutrient deficiency.
Or mineral malabsorption due to low stomach acid. Yes.
What is your opinion
Oh.
about muscle testing? Like a lot of chiropractors that have holistic health approach do that. What is your opinion on that?
I love it. I gotta tell you, I mean, I've done it for my own family, but I don't use it with supplements for people. But in my therapy with people and the therapeutic aspect of it, I do muscle testing to see what some blocking beliefs might be. So sometimes I say to somebody, well, you know, hold out your arm, and I say, repeat after me, I want to be happy.
I want to be happy.
Hold strong, and then their arm drops.
So you really push hard. I really do want to.
I did push hard that time. But so a lot of times, again, kind of the thoughts, right? So we have like conscious awareness thoughts. I won't go off on this, but we have conscious awareness thoughts, and then we have automatic thoughts that we don't even realize that we have. Sometimes people go, I'm anxious and I don't know why. It's because we're having thoughts without even recognizing we're having it. So I help to kind of test or figure out what is blocking you from healing. But with my family, I do the muscle testing for supplements, and I think it's, so the concept for people who don't know what it is, really, really quickly, is that our body knows when something's a lie or when it's a truth, okay? So like when or good news or bad news. So when we feel solid about something, when it feels like a truth, our muscles stay strong. When we don't believe in something or something is not good for us, we temporarily get a weakness. You know, it's why in TV shows when they're going to deliver bad news, they say, you better have a seat, right? We get bad news and, you know, people do this. You know, they regain it, but there's a moment of collapse. So when we're eating things, holding things, taking things that are not resonating with our body, it does the same thing. So sometimes when you go to see somebody, they'll tell you to hold the supplement and hold your arm out, and they'll test it. And if your arm drops, your body doesn't like it. And if your body needs it, or it resonates with your body, your arm will stay strong and you won't be able to drop it. Some people believe in it, some people don't,
Will
but
they test for any like deficiencies of any minerals?
I've
or
never
any
used it to
minerals?
test deficiencies. Even with my family, I've only done it to test certain supplements to see if I've had that done for myself. In addition to my first slide, I had some chronic Lyme stuff, and so when I went to see a practitioner, every time she thought about giving me, you know, something, she always muscle tested, and it was fascinating. Let's start here, and then we'll get to you guys.
Health insurance doesn't cover, but how about the lab tests you have done? Do they cover any of that? You said when you were.
These are functional tests. They won't cover any functional tests because they just don't, like a comprehensive stool analysis, they think that's unnecessary.
Oh, so none of these are lab.
No testing, no visits. They don't cover any of it. They don't believe in it. They think everything we just said is absolutely ridiculous and makes no sense. So they are not supporting it with insurance.
We do.
Can you use HSA funds for that? Or?
I'm sorry?
I have heard some people do that.
Oh, HSA.
HSA. I've heard some people do use the, you know, I mean, I'm not going to tell people whether to do it or not do it, but for services or for tests, I have had some people use their HSA.
Could you put the previous screen back on?
Sure. So there were a couple questions
Wasn't
here.
there one that-
Was that good?
Do you remember what was on it or what you were looking for? Because we could find
Which slide?
I thought it had other information, maybe this one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You can follow us. That's our handles on Instagram.
So for someone potentially thinking of going into this field, like looking back on your journeys and your schooling routes and all experience routes, what kind of advice would you give to somebody going into the field?
I would tell you to be very careful about which program. I just did another reel on this because there are 32-hour programs to become a functional medicine practitioner. You could say I'm a functional, it's not a licensed profession, it's a certification. You could get a certification in 32 hours, in 12 weeks, and they have them for 6 months. I put on my slide like all the different ones that they have. In 2 months, in 6 months, in 1 year, in 2 years. We went to a 3+ year program that was intensive, and it was not I would have failed most of my clients had had my training stopped at 1 year, or never mind 12 weeks, or even 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, really, anybody can call themselves that, right? I had a client who saw a functional psychiatrist and came to me and said, that he said that all the lab work that looked okay, and I was like, bring it in. We took a look, and I was like, what do you mean it's all okay? I mean, there was so much that was off, and so of course they went to medication, and so, which is, again, fine, like if that's what they wanted to do, but they were specifically looking for some alternatives, and so they saw functional, so I just think you have to look really in depth and make sure you're checking out some good programs. And there are good ones, but there are some that, again, I went on a week.
There are many good ones. IFM, there are many good ones. But I got to tell you that in my journey, I initially wanted to go to only an MD who was a functional medicine practitioner because I thought that's the holy grail. Now I got both. I mean, what's better than that? I was so disappointed because what I found is that they took a 12-hour course, a 12-week course, or a year course, whatever it was, and then they called themselves a functional blank. And what they did, in my case, and with my twin daughters, is that they quickly fell back on their conventional training. Oh, this supplement, little remedy that I just gave you didn't work. You know what? It might be time, Cheryl, that we're going to have to go with the antibiotics, or we're going to have to go with, and I was like, but that's exactly what I wanted to avoid. I want to see this through. So it turned out that after my third MD functional medicine doctor, I've learned that it doesn't matter. It's all in the specific practitioner that you want somebody with good training, but just because they're an MD, and that didn't work out for me. I flew to Oregon to find the person who saved my life when I was deathly ill, thought I was dying, nobody could figure it out, top New York City, Columbia Presbyterian, was like, you need to go on psychological drugs because your gut, sometimes it's used off-label, and it can help. And I thought, my mind is fine. This is the only problem I'm having. I had SIBO, I had so it failed me. So, I don't know. I got lost in something. I'm sorry. I'm angry, clearly. Yeah, I don't know.
Have you ever had a patient or a client who was taking a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor that didn't work, and then your holistic treatment changed the day for that person?
Oh,
I'm
that's...
talking about the clinical setting.
I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I see that. That kind of like Cheryl was saying, that people, she's not the first place that they go. I mean, people come crawling, into our offices. And so I absolutely see people who are on or were on, an SSRI or a benzodiazepine, and still felt terrible, right? It just, or now they're dealing with some other side effects. I'm working with somebody now who, she's been on an SSRI for decades, 20 years, I think she's on it. And oh my gosh, every time she tries to dip down a little bit, it's just awful. So we're really going slow to replenish, right? Because now 20 years on the SSRI, guess what that does? It messes up the gut, right? So now that it's just this awful cycle. So she's got so much damage from all of these years being on, she was on birth control too, but being on an SSRI for decades, and she's trying to dig her way out of this now.
Is it difficult to wean?
Not for every, you have to wean carefully, yes. But some people can do it a little bit more easily. She was on it for so long, and she's so sensitive anyway, that we're going to, that Tiffany's pharmacy, they are making like a liquid for her so that literally she can decrease by drops. We are micro, decreasing, and slowly getting there, but it's just been, and she's mad now, right? She was really done a disservice. And she came to me not because, I just want to stop the medication. 5 to 7 years ago, it stopped working. And so they were just piling on more and more. Well, it wasn't working because it's destroying your gut, and with SSRIs, listen, for short term, these things can be lifesavers. So I am not anti-medication by any means. But what happens over time is that the brain is so smart that the SSRIs force the brain to hold on to serotonin. That's what it does. It doesn't give you more serotonin, it forces your brain to hold on to it. So it tricks your brain into thinking that you have more serotonin than you do. Over time, what happens is that your brain goes, man, we have a lot of serotonin. There's a lot of that floating around. Boys, shut off production. So it actually now decreases. So this is somebody who is already in a deficit, and now the SSRIs are creating even more of a deficit. It's telling her body to shut down production. And that's why people go, oh, it was working for 10 years, but now I feel depressed again. Well, you need an increase. Well, why do you need an increase? Because the SSRI is decreasing your production. So it's a terrible cycle, but yes, those are people that I work with often. Sorry, I get passionate.
Yep. You guys seem to, I want to say be very against, but seem to be against birth control. So, can you just explain why that is, just for people who sometimes find it necessary for medical reasons?
I am not against birth control. I'm against that the unfortunate side effect is that it will cause enhanced intestinal permeability, aka leaky gut, and it will lower your B6 production. Those are side effects. Some people do find relief by using it, but that's a Band-Aid. You didn't ever find out what's causing it. You don't have a birth control deficiency to manage your symptoms. There's another reason that was not yet uncovered for whatever medical condition, not quotes, you have a medical condition, this medical condition, no. There's a medical condition and the symptoms are being covered up. It's not the root cause.
Take it away. I was on birth control for years and years and years and years and years for endometriosis, so for medical purposes, right? And just awful menstruation. I'm paying the price, right? So, but now this is, I don't know what the answer is, right? I'm talking to my friend whose daughter now is going off to college, and she's like, tell me what to do. Birth control, IUD, and I'm like, I don't know. There's not a great answer, right? I mean, are, teenagers gonna do what is the whole family planning? No, probably not. We don't know what to do. So, so do we know people are going to go on birth control? Yes, we know people are going to. Do we try to manage around that? So people don't. Yes. So again, it does deplete B6. So that could be something you could take. You might take something to support your gut lining, right? So it's not about, I work with people who are on SSRIs and stay on SSRIs. So, our mission is not, unless somebody really wants to, our mission is not to yank things away from people. I work with people who are on all kinds of medications, and we're healing around it. If at some point they would like to work on coming off of that, fantastic. I will support them in that. If they do not, and they're like, don't touch my XYZ, I am not touching their XYZ. That is totally fine with me. So we can still heal even with some of these things in place. We just have to know what they're doing so that we can kind of counteract or support your body, if there's something that you feel like you need to continue, for medical reasons.
We have to share this. So what I would tell you to do, if you're going to stay on birth control pill, just go ahead and take a Thorne Basic B complex that has some B6, but also protect your gut lining by taking something like glutagenics or GI relief. They're on an empty stomach. They are mucilagenic herbs that help your gut lining to stay healed and sealed.
When you get a script for blood work, can they test for B6 and B12? Is that just a line?
They can test for B6 and B12, not always great, because B12, for example, it's what's hanging out in your serum. It's a blood test. We want, for example, B12 would be an MMA, a methylmalonic acid test, which tests cellular levels of B12, where the action occurs. So sometimes people come back with elevated B12 or optimal B12 above 650, but then I get an MMA back and the cellular level is rock bottom. So that's an inverse relationship. MMA is going to show high when you're actually low in B6. So if you're showing above mid-range in MMA, I know that your cellular level is low. So the testing is, you have to work with someone who knows these nuances.
Gotcha.
And even some conventional blood work, right? Like we tell people if they have blood work, you know, CBC, CMP, to bring that in because there's clues. You know, there are things that we can find. That's why she was saying health history, and that's if we do nothing else, health history, and if you've had some, you know, yearly blood work, there's a lot of details that we can get out of that that they're just not looking at or looking for. And so a lot of times I just look and I'm like, oh, that's probably an issue, that's probably an issue, just from basic blood work.
And you gave really good advice on when to take the Bs. When do you take the Ds? When do you take the magnesium? Like nobody ever tells you when to take these guys.
Magnesium's usually anytime some people get sensitive and they'll see like, oh, I got a little nauseous when I took magnesium, which usually doesn't cause any issues in the glycinate or malate or even the citrate form, except to make you go. But some people, if they're sensitive, you take it with food. D is a fat-soluble vitamin. Take it with food. Amino acids, you take away from foods. If you're taking NAC, if you're taking alpha-lipoic acid, these are amino acids. You want empty stomach. So mostly with food, when you would normally be digesting and absorbing nutrients, right?
Okay.
And vitamins. So you normally it's with food, but some are without. Like Aspergillosis, certain probiotics, away from food. So you want to work with someone who's savvy in these areas. Because they'll just say, take vitamin D.
Right.
They didn't say K2, they didn't say D3, they didn't say magnesium first to not offset that balance. It's all the devil in the detail. Anybody else have a last question or two before we wrap it up? Okay, in the back?
So supplementation is good, but can you take it long term, or like should you rather focus on good nutrition to get all the vitamins and minerals
We
from?
always want food. We always want food first. Food is best, right? And even when we're doing supplementation, ideally it's just to support people to get back to where they need to be. You know, if we're looking at it in the same way we look at medication, we're not doing anything any better than anybody else is doing, right? You know, we can give medication, we can give a bunch of supplements. That is not the end goal. So we try to help people